We're going to begin this morning in the Middle East, where Israel and Iran are trading new attacks as the conflict enters its second week. And the White House sets a new deadline for Iran. President Trump says he will decide within the next 2 weeks if he'll order U.S. forces to strike nuclear sites, leaving the door open for a diplomatic solution. For more on this, I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams, who's following the developments from Erbil, which is in Iraq, very, very close to the Iranian border. So, Holly, the president says he's going to make a decision on whether or not to strike on Iran within the next 2 weeks. But as you know, 2 weeks in terms of what we're talking about right now, this ongoing battle between the Israelis and the Iranians, that's a lifetime. So what do we know about the plans for Israel to try and dismantle Iran's nuclear programs before this 2-week deadline?
Good morning, Vlad. Well, the destruction of Iran's nuclear program was really the justification for Israel's attack and this war. And the Israelis do seem to have made some significant progress. They've targeted and killed several Iranian nuclear scientists. They've also hit several nuclear sites, including Natanz, where the Iranians had been enriching uranium up to 60%, a step away from the 90% that's typically used in nuclear weapons. But experts say that all of those airstrikes are essentially in vain unless the Israelis can also take out the Fordow nuclear site, where the Iranians have also been enriching uranium. They say if they don't, the risk is that the Iranians will be more motivated to get their hands on a nuclear weapon. Now, the problem with the Fordow site is that it's not just underground, it's actually buried inside a mountain. And the conventional wisdom is that the Israelis do not have the military capacity to take it out. Now, the US does, with huge bunker buster bombs and the B-2 bombers that can deliver them. So if the US does end up getting directly involved, that is what to watch for. However, it is also worth watching out for some kind of innovative, alternative solution from the Israelis. You may remember that back in September last year, Israeli special forces launched this kind of daring commando raid on a missile production facility in Syria. Now, doing something like that in Fordow would be much, much, much more difficult. But do the Israelis have something like that in mind? We don't know.
So let's talk about possible U.S. involvement, Holly. Iran has warned of retaliation if the U.S. does carry out any kind of strikes. But what would that look like? Are we talking about just attacks on our forces in the Middle East? Are we talking about perhaps terrorist attacks in major American cities? What sort of, I guess, conditions is the president and the administration weighing?
Well, I think bottom line, we don't know. Iran has already accused the US of being complicit in Israel's attack and has threatened to retaliate against American bases. And there are a lot of US military bases scattered across the Middle East, including here in Iraq, as well as around 40,000 American troops. You may remember back in 2020, the Iranians actually attacked a US base, or a base used by US forces here in Iraq, al-Assad, with ballistic missiles. We were there a few days later. We saw the extensive damage, although no American service members were killed in that attack. But now Iran has clearly been significantly weakened by just over a week of war with Israel. Just to give you one example of that, Israel's military said today that overnight it had more than 50 fighter jets flying non-stop over Iran's capital, Tehran, and they were able to target nuclear-related locations as well as missile production sites. So I think the big question now is, what kind of retaliation is Iran actually capable of? And we're not sure.
All right, Holly Williams reporting for us from Erbil, Iraq. Holly, thank you very much. Stay safe. All right, let's get now to our Ed O'Keefe, who's tracking all of this from the White House, and he joins me now from the White House lawn. So, Ed, as you know, this isn't the first time. I've talked about this many times on CBS News 24/7, that the president using the verbal crutch 2 weeks anytime he's asked a question about a decision he's weighing. I've often said that that's something that harkens back to my days in finance when I was working on deals with clients. A client would ask me, when can they expect something? And you always give the 2 weeks because it gives you a little buffer. But what feels different about this, Ed, is that now the way that the press is reporting these 2 weeks, it's almost as if it's a deadline. What can you tell us?
Yeah, and we've done that before on all sorts of issues, whether it was taxes and infrastructure or how to deal with ISIS in his first term, giving Vladimir Putin 2 weeks' notice to see how serious he was on ending the war in Ukraine a few weeks ago, and that deadline came and went, or just saying last week that in 2 weeks he's sending letters to everybody about how high their tariffs will be. There are all sorts of examples. This one, though, the within 2 weeks window is the timetable, and a lot of it rides on what happens today in Geneva, where we have these talks underway between the British, the Germans, the French, and the Iranians, where they're sharing a French proposal, and where the British are reminding the Iranians there's an American proposal that essentially tells them, if you really are just using nuclear fuel for domestic energy consumption, then extract all the nuclear fuel you have, send it outside your country, and buy it if you need it for civilian purposes from someone else. That's something we can permit. The Iranians have signaled this morning they're not for that necessarily, so we'll see where things go from there. And, you know, but you're right. This is either going to be one of those things that peters out because the president changes the subject to other things, or that he actually makes a decision on and announces. And a lot of it rides on how these talks go in the next few days, and whether, as Holly was saying, Israel is planning something on its own unilaterally that wouldn't necessarily require American support.
Yeah, I'm old enough, Ed, to remember that the president, then candidate Trump, promised to produce Barack Obama's birth certificate in 2 weeks. It's been 10 years, still waiting. But to serious matters, we've also learned that the president is set to have a National Security Council meeting today. I don't know if you saw that interview that Guardian White House correspondent Hugo Lowell gave to one on Steve Bannon's podcast, where they talked about these bunker busters, Ed, and that we don't really know. They've done tests as to whether or not these bunker busters can penetrate that deep into a mountain, but it's never really been applied in any real wartime situation, and the potential would be that you would have to use a tactical nuclear device. So we know the president is meeting with the National Security Council. Is he weighing these types of options at his disposal?
As we understand it, yes. And remember, we've reported that he has already approved potential military attack plans. That happened on Tuesday night. We don't know what they are, but they are, in essence, out there to be used if he decides to do so. So it could involve dropping a or several bunker buster bombs, which weigh about 30,000 pounds, can only be dropped by the B-2 stealth bomber, because we're the only ones that have an aircraft that can carry such a heavy and long weapon and drop it over that kind of a target. So that's one option. The others, of course, are to just merely support what Israel is doing and be prepared for potential attacks on American interests in the region or around the world. The other thought here is that he's delaying this, and that's why he set the 2-week timetable, to let more military assets get into the region. We've reported how jets are being deployed to that region, F-16s, F-35s. The USS Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group is making its way towards Europe, which puts it closer to that region where you have 2 other carrier strike groups already. It may just be allowing things to get in place. And then there's the possibility, Vlad, that this is all a ruse, right? That he said 2 weeks, but that really he could make a decision later today or over the weekend and surprise Iran after those talks in Geneva if they don't go well. All of it to be determined. This element of surprise is part of how the president operates, and it's part of why the world is holding its breath, waiting and watching.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And I also note, we should note that we've learned, CBS News has learned that law enforcement is stepping up surveillance of Iran-backed cells in the United States, even as, Ed, you know, the Iranians are meeting with some European diplomats in an effort to try and hammer out something, but the U.S. isn't at least formally a part of that.
No, they're not. And again, that's where this proposal of potential buying nuclear fuel from another country, but not making it, developing it within Iran, is being proposed again, or is being reiterated to the Iranians. The French have an idea as well. The Europeans more broadly may have proposals. We're expected to learn more about it throughout the day. And we should point out, when it comes to those terror cells, these are possible domestic-based terror cells tied to Hezbollah, which, of course, the U.S. designates as a terror organization with ties to Iran. No definitive proof yet that such a cell is here, but the FBI is stepping up for surveillance just in case. They're not formally commenting on it. The White House hasn't said anything about it as well, but it is underway.
All right, Ed O'Keefe on the White House lawn with some crucial reporting for us on this first day of summer. Not a drop of sweat on the man. Always looking good. Not yet. Ed O'Keefe, thank you, friend. Appreciate it.